Good morning and welcome to day 17 of the 30-day video challenge. I am feeling kind of nervous this morning. My heart's racing a little bit today. Our topic that is causing these palpitations is describe yourself in your teenage years from about 13 to 19. So in my teenage years, I thought I was pretty cool. I did. But those years span quite a bit, so I'll start at the 13-year end and work my way up to 19. So when I was 13, I was in high school, living on the Gold Coast. I thought I was pretty cool. I think everyone thinks they're pretty cool. We were in the 80s, the coolest time ever. Chambray shirts, patterned pants, checkered pants, baggy clothes were in, pleats were in. It was good times. I remember wearing dad's shirts and thinking I was pretty cool. I thought I was pretty fashion forward. I remember having on one of dad's shirts and one of his ties. Musically, there was Boy George, Madonna, Rick Astley, Whitney Houston. I was a big fan of the Eagles, the 80s do-rock Lees. Hey, thanks for joining me. At 14 was my very first time of going into a nightclub underage, and I was freaking out. I was with Miss Tabitha Ransom. She had led me astray, and I felt like a kid. And I was a kid in a nightclub. I remember getting home and Dad had been up to check on me, and he never actually said anything. I got home and it seemed like he had been checking every hour to see if I was in bed, because he knew I was going out. He knew that I was going to hang out with Tabitha. He just didn't know that we were going into the nightclubs. And so I didn't get in trouble for it, but again, it was self-inflicted torture of knowing I'd done something wrong, and so it actually wasn't really fun for me. So I thought I was very creative. I thought I was pretty creative. I remember thinking I was a hairdresser, and at school doing an undercut on Nikki Bentley. And as a parent now, man, if my kid did that to another kid, I would be, whoa, what are you thinking? You can cut someone else's hair at school. But no, back then I thought, whoa, we're cool. We can do what we want. It's our hair. I'm a hairdresser. This is cool. This is the 80s. One of the other ladies in the challenge was talking about how she had shaved the side of her head and she had a rat's tail. I thought, well, that's actually coming back in style. So the 80s, I thought I was pretty cool. I thought I was creative. I thought I was pretty intelligent. In some ways, the school thought that too. Like high school for me was, whoa, this is the thing. For me, like high school, I was a good kid. I was a C student. I was a very average student, and yet I was recognised in the gifted and talented group. And as I said, I thought I was creative, and then in art class, I think I failed art because I wasn't creative within the scope of art wasn't creative. I was creative. Art was more about theory, and how do I say this? I didn't understand the need for theory. If you can do something, like if you can do it, why do you need the theory? I now can grasp the appreciation of theory, but as a kid, I was very practical, and I think that comes from my Māori heritage, and even my dad my dad's side. New Zealand is a very do-it-yourself, you can do anything kind of philosophy. We have a thing called number 8 wire mentality, which is like you can get a piece of barbed wire and twist it together and that'll hold anything together. So that's the national culture. Our Māori culture is very much practical, so find in our schools our Māori students don't do so well because school's not really made for them, and that's part of the reason why I sit on school boards is to be able to offer a perspective from someone who wasn't a scholar, wasn't particularly enamoured with school. I didn't like school. I like the teachers, I like the people, but being in that school environment always made me feel wrong, and it made me feel I don't know. I didn't speak up in school. I didn't offer my opinion, and I can see from a teacher's perspective, not that I'm a teacher, but it's very hard to draw out a kid who doesn't want to speak up. So my teenage years were a little bit, I guess, conflicted in thinking I'm cool, I'm intelligent, I'm creative within myself, and then something or an external system saying you're not creative because you're failing art, you're not that intelligent because you're only a C student, and I don't know if you're cool because I'm a school and I can't define your coolness, so I'll stick with that. I really was cool. What else happened to me in my teenage years? When I was 15, nearly 16, I had my first boyfriend, Chris Gale, and I have some very fond memories of Chris and some very strong emotions around my first boyfriend. That was the biggest heartbreak of my life, and to have a boyfriend in the same school and to have broken up, that really did affect my schooling. I would be in class crying, like much like now, my eyes would just leak. And in the schools today, we are so fortunate because, I mean, the schools that I work with, we have counsellors in our high schools, we have teachers who are trained to deal with, emotional upsets for kids and anything that's going on in their homes. So we are so well prepared today, and I think it's from probably our generation, my generation and before, having to go through this hard stuff and really just bear it by ourselves. Oh, thank you, my sister. So yeah, that was the greatest heartbreak of my life, but at the same time it was a real, oh man, our relationship was really, really special. When I think about how close we were, we were in each other's pockets, like we were just together so much. We would come to school the next day and we would have had the same dream. Like we would have dreamed the same dream and be able to talk about it together. Not that we met each other in our dreams, but we had the same or similar dreams, and we'd talk about it in the morning at school and be blown away by just how close we were. And I think what happened with that relationship is you'd be familiar with the phrase, familiarity breeds contempt. So at 16, I wasn't really emotionally prepared to deal with the closeness and the familiarity and that the contempt that came with it. So we broke up, and for me that was the reason we broke up. I just got so close that I was no longer myself, and as much as I loved him, I was starting to hate him, and that was a really, really hard time, but it was also a blessing in helping me to learn and grow and to develop the understanding at that age of relationships, and also knowing myself and knowing that I need space to heal, and I need to have my own identity. Although I in saying that, I have fallen into that trap again in relationships. But from that very first breakup and that very first heartbreak and hurt, I've always set this rule for myself to allow a year between relationships at least, to be able to get back to me, get back to being me, and get back to just being able to stand and be myself. So that was a massive lesson in my teenage years. I had to write notes because this was such a big topic. So when I think I was 13 or 14, got my first job, and we were very fortunate to have friends in the street who owned a pizza franchise. So they owned Silvio's Pizza on the Gold Coast, and my first job was answering phones at the pizza shop, taking orders, and from there went on to become a pizza maker, and eventually with that experience I became a supervisor at quite a young age, and I had another life lesson there, and that was a really hard one, because I was have always been very systematic, and I like things to be done efficiently and effectively. And when you're given such responsibility at such a young age and not given the tools on how to handle yourself and to handle other people, it's pretty much a recipe for disaster. So I had the authority and I had a job to do, and I didn't necessarily handle people well, and I turned into a bit of a control freak actually. And I ended up quitting that job just because of who I had become. Oh yeah, you are learning a lot about me, Lise. And that's what these videos are so great, because not only are you learning about me, but I'm able to, like, I know some things about me, but I'm also discovering things about me through this process. So it's quite an incredibly valuable process. So I became a bit of a control freak, and I didn't like who I had become, and I didn't know how to become someone different without stepping away from that job and stepping away from that role. And so I quit that job, and it was a hard lesson, and I guess that's why my sister's only discovering these things about me now, is because there is shame in that, and there wasn't the systems to, or the support within that business structure to say, actually, Kelly, you know, you could have done this differently, or you could have said this in a way that would be better received, or, you know, how about having a team meeting and everyone being able to communicate and collaborate. So I'm grateful that that's an age that we're in now, and that's an age that is very much part of the New Zealand schooling system, and very coming to the forefront now. So that was my lesson about being a control freak and not dealing well, and that's why I am so much about relationships and so much about communication, because, you know, without that communication and without those relationships, there are people out there who are hurting, and people like me, like I'm through this process, I'm healing some stuff that I didn't even know needed healing, and bringing it to the light. But yeah, there's people who go through their whole lives not being seen, you know, not being seen and not being heard. And it's a horrible place to be sitting in. It's a horrible place to be, feeling unseen and feeling unheard. So that is, that's what's important to me. What else do I have here? Oh, so after high school, when I was about 19, hello my beautiful niece, Zai. You can learn all about your auntie. I'm just getting into when I was 19. After high school, I went to Business Academy to learn business administration and marketing. And I actually had a great time at the academy. It was in Surfers Paradise, and it was right next to the, it was in Cavalab, which is quite famous in Surfers Paradise, right next to the movies, and McDonald's and Hungry Jack's or Burger King was just down the road. So what I remember about those days, I remember my business manager instructor telling us that the sign of a really great manager is that they're never in the office because they've delegated everything. There was rules about wearing stockings, and that was when I experimented with smoking. And smoking is disgusting, I have to say. I would get head spins, but because I wanted to fit in and everyone else was smoking, I would smoke. Not a lot, like maybe one cigarette a day, and I think I've only ever bought one packet of cigarettes, so it was like I'll buy a packet and I'll share it, so that I don't look like I look like I'm a smoker, but I don't really have to smoke because I've shared all my cigarettes. So smoking was expensive and tasted disgusting and made my head spin, so I haven't been a smoker, and I don't particularly like smoking. And I'm quite grateful that all of our environments, entertainment environments, and even our nightclubs are smoke free. So it's kind of weird going from a smoking environment to be going smoke free. And one of the things about a night out was that you'd always come home stinking of smoke, and your hair would reek of cigarette smoke. And once the law passed that there was no more smoking allowed in clubs and bars, you came home and it was like, well, did I have a good night? Because I don't stink of smoke. So that was quite funny, but that was my teenage years. So yeah, I thought I was creative, I thought I was cool, and I thought I was intelligent, but the messages from society actually created a conflict within me and created a separation of who I thought I was and who I thought other people thought I was. And I think I've been carrying that for a very, very, very long time, about trying to, not consciously, but trying to live up to something that I didn't think I was. And really, I never could be because it's imaginary. So, a little epiphany for me there. So that's me as a teenager. I really was cool. I could have been a hairdresser. I could have been anything. Yeah, so that's me for the day. Thank you for hanging out with me. Love you. And I will see you again tomorrow. Mwah.